Yes, a very good morning to all. We continue our chapter Body Fluids and Circulation. Our today's topic is cardiac cycle. You see, in the last lecture, we discussed about nodal tissue in the heart, which is controlling the rhythm of heartbeats. In a way, the heartbeats are also identified as cardiac cycles. If you can recall, we had understood the fact that per minute heart is beating for approximately how many times, how many heartbeats or cardiac cycles completed in 1 minute by the heart? Approximately 72. Of course, it cannot be precise 72, it can be here and there. And that brings the duration of each cardiac cycle or each heartbeat down to how many seconds? If 72 times it has to beat in 60 seconds, then per heartbeat it takes how much? 0.8 sec. So that is about the cardiac cycles time duration. Now in this 0.8 seconds, which events are occurring? So broadly they are categorized into three events. Number one, the diastole, the joint diastole of atria and ventricles, then atrial systole, and the ventricular systole. Now here the term systole, it refers to the phase of contraction. If I say atrial systole, it's about contraction of atria. If I say ventricular systole, it's about contraction of ventricles. So whenever any chamber of heart undergoes contraction, we say it is experiencing systole. The diastole refers to the relaxation aspect. Diastole refers to the relaxation aspect. Means when I say atrial diastole, means atria are undergoing relaxation. Ventricular diastole means ventricles are undergoing relaxation. So always remember the two positions, two conditions of chambers, either they are contracting or they are relaxing. Respectively, they are either in systole or else are in a diastole. So coming back to our 0.8 seconds for which the cardiac cycle runs. In the first 0.4 seconds, both atria and ventricles shall remain in a diastole, relaxed state. They will be relaxing in this state. For next 0.1 sec, the atria are contracting, whereas the ventricles shall continue with their relaxation. Next 0.3 sec, the third phase, where atria are relaxing and ventricles are contracting. Atrial diastole and ventricular systole. So the whole event of cardiac cycle, which is also known as heartbeat, it takes 0.8 second, 0.4 seconds for joint diastole, 0.1 sec for atrial systole, and 0.4 or 0.3 sec for ventricular systole. Like that, the three phases in which the whole cardiac cycle or the heartbeat is accomplished. Have you all understood the three major phases of our heartbeat. Heartbeat, which is also known as cardiac cycle, 72 times it occurs per minute, which means per cardiac cycle or heartbeat, time required is 0.8 seconds. During this 0.8 seconds, three major events occur. In first 0.4 seconds, the joint systole, where both atria and ventricles are relaxing. Next 0.1 sec, atrial systole and ventricular diastole, atria undergoing contraction, ventricles undergoing relaxation. 0.3 sec, atrial diastole and ventricular systole, where atria are relaxing, ventricles are contracting. This sequence of events which occur as a one cycle known as cardiac cycle, which are repeated again and again until the heart works, it keeps on happening. Of course, the typical cardiac cycle should be completed in 0.8 seconds. But if heartbeats are or cardiac cycles are completed faster, then this timing may be less than 0.8 seconds when our heartbeats increase. And at times when the pace decreases, it might take a little longer time than the 0.8 second. What we are learning is the standardized feature 0.8 seconds per cardiac cycle. Let us understand each event separately. Number one, the first subphase of cardiac cycle called as joint diastole, 0.4 seconds, the one in which atria are relaxing, diastolic stage, ventricles are relaxing, diastolic stage. While the atria are relaxing, they receive blood from lungs, the oxygenated blood carried by the pulmonary vein. It comes into left atrium. Simultaneously from the body, the deoxy blood carried by the various veins. Finally, through vena cava, it is been poured into right atrium. Parallelly, if you see, the AV valves are open. So from right atrium, deoxy blood goes into right ventricle. From left atrium, oxy blood goes into left ventricle. At this stage, the AV valves were open. And as you can see, the semilunar valves are closed. So blood from the ventricles is not going out, it stays in the ventricles. This event lasts for 0.4 sec. This is called as joint diastole. Have you all understood? Chaliye. If you have understood, give answer to my questions. Which is the sub phase 1 in a cardiac cycle? Which is the sub phase 1 in a cardiac cycle? Joint diastole. How long it lasts? Point 0.4 second. During this, which chambers are in a relaxed state? Both atria and ventricles. During this, which type of blood is passed on by body tissues? Deoxy blood. finally has been brought into right atrium via what? Vena cava, superior and inferior vena cava. At this stage, which valves are open? AV valves. So from right atrium, deoxy blood goes into which one? Right ventricle, exactly. Meanwhile, which blood is passed on by the lungs forward? Passed on forward. Which blood? Oxy blood, exactly. Collected via which blood vessel it is brought into left atrium? Pulmonary vein. Again, AV valves open. So from left atrium, oxy blood pushed forward into which one? See, atria are not contracting. Just because AV valves are closed, literally the blood collected by atria is directly poured subsequently into ventricles over there. At this stage, AV valves remain open. Let's talk about the second subphase. The atrial systole, the one in which now actually the atria are contracting. So whatever remaining blood was there in the atria, that is also been pushed into ventricles. Of course, ventricles are relaxing this stage. The deoxy blood from right atrium goes to right ventricle via tricuspid valve. The oxy blood from the left atrium goes into left ventricle via bicuspid valve. So for remaining 0.4 sec initially when the blood was directly being poured, here it is for 0.1 second forcibly pushed from atria to ventricles. As of course, for this the signal must have come from SA node while it has initiated the contraction of the atria, which initiated this whole event of atrial systole, pushing the oxy blood from left atrium to left ventricle via bicuspid and pushing the deoxy blood from right atrium through tricuspid valve into right ventricle. And again at this stage, when the cuspid valves, AV valves were open, parallelly the semilunar valves were closed. For 0.1 sec, systole of atria and diastole of ventricles. Have you all understood the second subphase of cardiac cycle? Great. Let's revise it. Which is the second subphase of cardiac cycle? Atrial systole. At the same time, what is the status of ventricles? For this point, how many seconds? Yeah, they are in relaxed or diastolic stage. And how long this stage lasts? 0.1 sec. Which part of heart sends the signal for atrial contraction? Atrial systole? SAN, that is sinoatrial node. It generates action potential which causes atria to contract. Previous 0.4 seconds where atrial blood was already passing into the ventricles because of open AV valves. Whatever remaining blood was there, approximately 30% of the blood left in the atria is further pushed by this atrial systole into the ventricles. Which blood is poured into right ventricle? Deoxy. Absolutely right. Which blood is poured into left ventricle? Oxy. Absolutely right. And at this time, which valves shall remain closed? Correct. Semilunar valve. Let's talk about the third subphase. The third subphase is identified as ventricular systole over there. As you can see that at this stage, when ventricles are contracting, atria shall be relaxing over there. So ventricular systole and atrial diastole. This is lasting for 0.3 sec. अब देखो atrial walls are thin. So they require 0.1 second to complete their contraction and propel the blood into ventricles. Ventricular walls are thick. Their contraction requires 0.3 seconds, 3 times more the time than that of the atrial systole, to push the blood forward into the body. So let's talk about it. Avn Atrioventricular Node. This nodal tissue has sent a signal which passes via a bundle of His, then the right and left branches, and then into the Purkinje fibers, which innervate into the ventricular wall and cause the ventricular contraction. This is pushing the blood forward from the right ventricle, opening the semilunar valve into the pulmonary trunk, and from that into the pulmonary arteries and into the lungs. The deoxy blood is propelled. At the same time, when left ventricle is contracting, the thickest wall, again the semilunar valve remains open, and through the aorta, further through the arterial system, the oxy blood will be passing into the entire body tissue. While this is happening, the semilunar valves were open. The AV valves will remain closed. The AV valves will remain closed to prevent the backflow of blood from ventricles to atria. This is about the third subphase of cardiac cycle. I hope you have understood. Have you understood? So give me the answers for my questions. Question number 1. Which is the third subphase in cardiac cycle? Correct, ventricular systole. Absolutely right. Jugal was the first one. At this stage, what is the status of atria? Yeah, Zanil and Jugal again correct. Diastolic stage. Point number next. How long does the third subphase ventricular systole last? Yes, H. Correct. 0.3 sec. What sends the signal for ventricular contraction? Signal for that comes from where? Galav and Mahavir. AVN, atrioventricular. First conducted by AV bundle, which is further conducted by That stimulus or action potential is further conducted by bundle of E's. Anil was the first one. And further by, again, Purkinje fibers. And that causes ventricular systole. During this subphase, when ventricles are contracting, which valves remain closed? AV valves, to prevent the backflow of blood from ventricles to atria. At this time, which valves remain open? Semilunar. Which blood is released from right ventricle? Deoxy, correct. Axa and xanil, correct. And that first enters into which major artery? Common pulmonary artery, common pulmonary trunk. And from that to pulmonary arteries, and then it goes to which one? Finally, lungs for oxygenation. Parallelly from left ventricle, which blood is released? Pumped. Rather than release, it should be pumped. Disha and xanil, correct. Oxy blood. First entering into crossing the semilunar valve, it will enter into which major artery? Aorta, galla and jugal, correct. And through the arterial system, it will be reaching to the oxy blood will reach to. Exactly, body parts. Now, a few questions to confirm whether you have understood or not. In a given cardiac cycle, for how long the atria, in a 0.8 second long cardiac cycle, how long the atria remain in a diastole? Galav is right, 0.7. Jugal is wrong, 0.5 is wrong. Eighth and Zanil and Gallo was the first one, by the way. Jugal, do you realize your mistake?
हाँ सर मैंने वेंट्रिकुलर सिस्टोल को 0.1 मतलब कर दिया जो कि वो 0.3 था.
Yeah. Okay.
My bad.
Yeah, it's fine. Next question. How long in a 0.8 second long cardiac cycle, how long the ventricles remain in a diastole? Rudra and Gallo, correct. 0.5. This time around, Jugal and Zil also correct. Sharon and Aksa. Two more questions. In a cardiac cycle, how long the semilunar valves remain closed? So the previous topic, cardiac cycle, its subphases, that is over. Now we study some other aspects of cardiac cycle. Okay, let's talk about it. As I mentioned earlier, that the sequential events, such as what we have learned, joint diastole, atrial systole, and ventricular systole, the three major events occurring in a sequence, and cyclically they are repeated. That is called as cardiac cycle. 72 times it occurs per minute. So each time it occurs, it will require 0.8 second. That's a 0.8 second per heartbeat. That's the time required. Now, another term that you need to understand is a stroke volume. During the cardiac cycle, each ventricle, okay, is pumping out, each ventricle is pumping out approximately 70 ml of blood. That volume of blood being pumped out by the ventricle, each ventricle in a per cardiac cycle or per heartbeat is called stroke volume. That's termed as which one? Stroke volume. What is a stroke volume and what is the typical stroke volume value? The amount of blood being pumped out by each ventricle during a heartbeat or a cardiac cycle is called as a stroke volume. जब भी हार्ट बीट करता है तो from each ventricle, right ventricle में से as well as from left ventricle, from each of them, combine nahi, each of them, how much blood is pumped out, that is termed as stroke volume. Acha, normally how much is the amount? 70 ml blood is pumped out by right ventricle into the lungs, and from left ventricle through aorta into the body parts. So that is the stroke volume. If we multiply the stroke volume, if we multiply the stroke volume with number of heartbeats per minute, we get cardiac output. We get cardiac output. What is a cardiac output? Stroke volume into the heartbeats multiplied with heartbeats. अब एक typical stroke volume का अगर वैल्यू लिखना है तो वो 70 ml है. एक टिपिकल हार्ट बीट रिदम अगर चल रहा है तो पर मिनट पे होता है 72 टाइम्स. इफ वी मल्टीप्लाई दिस टू, तो वी गेट द अप्रोक्सीमेट टिपिकल कार्डियक आउटपुट वैल्यू 5000 ml. मल्टीप्लाई करके प्रिसाइज वैल्यू करके देखो कितना होता है. 5040. So approximately 5000 ml of blood is being pumped out, 5 liters in a way, no? So 5000 ml or 5 liters, whichever way you consider units, your choice. That is the amount of blood being pumped out per minute, per cycle, rather per minute by each ventricle, per cycle तो 70 ml है. Per minute it will be how much? So 5000 ml blood. That is our cardiac output. बोलिए, समझ में आया आपको? Amount of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute, that is the cardiac output. मैं इस डेफिनेशन में पर मिनट की जगह पे पर बीट लिखता हूं तो वो क्या बन जाएगा? इन द गिवन डेफिनेशन, हाँ वो बन जाएगा स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम. और उस स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम से मल्टीप्लाई कर दूं नंबर ऑफ हार्टबीट्स पर मिनट, तो वो बन जाता है कार्डियक आउटपुट. Now, how can we alter the cardiac output, or how does the cardiac output gets altered? Two possibilities. Either you increase the or change the heartbeat, or else you change the stroke volume. दो ही पॉसिबिलिटी है, या तो स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम चेंज करो या हार्ट बीट का चेंज करो. जनरली हम इंक्रीमेंट की बात करेंगे, इससे एफिशिएंसी बढ़ती है. So there are two ways to increase the cardiac output. Either तो you increase the number of heartbeats, that's the one way. आप इमेजिन करो कि आपका स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम 70 है, but your heart is beating for 100 times per minute. So how much will be your cardiac output instead of normal 5000? कितना हो जाएगा? 7000 ml, isn't it? 72,100 is wrong answer. Per stroke volume वो ही same रहता है 70 ml, but your number of heartbeats are increasing to 100 times. So your cardiac output shall reach to how much? 7000 ml from 5000. That's the one possibility of increment. Let's say your heart is beating for 72 times, but your stroke volume has increased to 80 ml. How much will be the cardiac output? Isn't it 5040 से increase होके 5760 पे चला जाएगा? चलो अगर ये 90 हो जाता है तो कितना? If you increase your stroke volume per time, per beat, you are pushing 90 ml. So did you realize the fact that your body can increase the cardiac output by either increasing the number of heartbeats or by increasing the stroke volume, or combinedly by both? ऐसा. अब जब हम एक्सरसाइज करते हैं तो हम सबका हार्ट बीट इंक्रीज हो जाता है. तो दैट इज टू इंक्रीज द कार्डियक आउटपुट, बिकॉज योर body requires more oxygen and more glucose. So generally we do it by which way? Increasing the heartbeat. Okay, that to everyone does. So how come the athletes and sportsmen and women increase their cardiac output? They generally focus more upon which one? They focus more upon which one? Stroke volume. I mean, like everyone else, non-sports person or non-athletic person, generally the heartbeats though will increase as we start performing exercise, we start playing. So how can the sports men and women and athletes will be different in showing more, stamina by supplying more blood to the body? So apart from heartbeat, what else they can do is they increase their stroke volume, जो नॉर्मल पर्सन में नहीं होता है. सो नॉर्मल पर्सन के कंपेयर में उनका स्टेमिना ज्यादा होता है. अब आप पूछोगे कि स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम कैसे कोई बढ़ा सकता है अपना? So for that you have to train your heart, you have to do certain exercise by which your heart stroke volume will increase. Some pulmonary cardio vascular exercise होती है जिससे आपकी हार्ट की स्ट्रेंथ इंक्रीज होती है. So over a long period, when you do those exercise, you train your heart to increase its stroke volume capacity, and that's what the athletes do. Athletes को specialized training दिया जाता है जिसमें उनकी cardiovascular and pulmonary exercise देके उनको over a long period of time उनके heart की strength बढ़ाई जाती है, और particular type of food दिया जाता है जिससे heart की strength हो. Specific exercise and specific food can provide your heart a stamina by which it can increase its stroke volume and can make you work like an athlete or sportsman and women, which ordinary person doesn't. Have you all understood this concept of cardiac output? Okay, it seems that majority students have understood the same. Our next topic is ECG, electrocardiogram. Before I go in details of the same, a break for 4-5 minutes. So enjoy the break. Okay, it seems all are returned. Am I right? Have you all returned back? Fine. Our next topic is ECG, electrocardiogram. You must have heard about and seen in real life as well as in movies. Whenever somebody who is aged and goes to the hospital complaining about chest pain or heart related issues, the first thing that they do is they see the ECG. Long paper trail on which some marking comes up like this. And of course, you must have seen in movies that on a monitor, person is in ICU and attached to the monitor, constantly that beep sound goes on over there, and suddenly this line becomes flat and they declare that the person is dead. Have you heard about it? वो जो लाइन फ्लैट हो जाती है वो पर्सन का ईसीजी होता है. If somebody is dead, you need to confirm it with ECG. कि अगर पर्सन का ईसीजी फ्लैट है, that means person is dead. ऐसा. So what I am trying to say is that something which you are already aware of, but I am giving the scientific detailed information about the same, that a graphical representation of electrical activities of heart during cardiac cycle. That's the definition of ECG. ECG है क्या basically? तो वो एक graphical representation है. Which aspect it is representing? It is representing electrical activities. What do we mean by electrical activities? So two major electrical activities, if you can note down, one is that SA node generating an electric impulse or action potential for atrial systole, and another one is AV node generating an impulse or action potential for ventricular systole. तो ये तो electrical activities होती है. Okay? During cardiac cycle, this happens during what? This happens during cardiac cycle over there. That you note down and you get what is called ECG. Of course, for that, there is a machine called electrocardiogram. Machine that is called as electrocardiogram. वो मशीन आपके ये इलेक्ट्रिकल चेंजेस को नोट करता है, जैसे ये मशीन है ECG, तो ये आपके ये जो बॉडी में जो हार्ट है यहाँ पे, from the heart during the cardiac cycle, from the heart during the cardiac cycle, the electrical impulses are generated for contraction of heart. But what happens is that your heart and your body fluids are good conductors of electricity. So this, millivolts, a very low magnitude of current, but it is a current, electric current. So this electric current which is generated in heart during the each cardiac cycle, it spreads in the body. What you can do is you can place the electrodes on body surface, and these electrodes will receive that current which is generated in your heart and spread it through body and been dissipating on the body surface. So on your body surface, you place the electrodes like this, and these electrodes will pass this current to the machine. Machine will decide the magnitude of the current, and that will be indicated as ECG. That will be indicated as ECG. आप अगर मॉनिटर पे देखोगे तो एक कंटिन्यूटी में ये एक ग्राफ चलता रहेगा. The electrodes are placed over the body, particularly one for each wrist and one for your left ankle. So these three electrodes pass on the information to the ECG machine, and it will analyze those inputs, those informations, and the standard ECG will be prepared from that by plotting the graph against time. Graph against what? Time. The value of electric current millivolts में measure होता है और time millisecond में, and then you get some sort of ECG like this, the graph like this, that is termed as ECG. What is the full form of ECG? What is the full form of ECG? Electrocardiogram. Electrocardiogram. It's a which type of representation? It's which type of representation? Graphical representation. ये ग्राफ है, इस एक्सिस पे मिलीवोल्ट्स है, the magnitude of electric current, और इस एक्सिस पे टाइम है in millisecond over there. So it's a time versus current magnitude graph. It's a graphical representation of electrical activity. During what? Electrical activity of heart. During what? Cardiac cycle. Exactly. Because during the cardiac cycle in the heart, SA node and AV node generate electric impulses which are spreading into the walls of heart and from that into the body and finally come to the body surface. The values of these currents can be measured by collecting this current at body surface. How many electrodes are placed on body surface to receive this current and determine its magnitude? 3 electrodes, of which 2 are in wrist. Exactly, 2 are in wrist, whereas 1 in left ankle. Exactly. Just to create the standard ECG, you can collect the leads from the 3 electrodes, 2 placed in the right and left, one each wrist and 1 in the left ankle, and that will help you to see the standardized ECG pattern. Achha, this is the diagrammatic presentation of a standardized ECG. Standard ECG will look like this typically. अच्छा, ये जो standardized ECG होता है उसमें values are fixed, कि जो time का जो gap होता है, कौन से time पे P wave आएगा, ये जो these are different waves that you can see here in the ECG. You can call this respectively as P wave, then QRS wave and T wave, और फिर खत्म होके यहाँ से नया ECG start होता है. Another ECG starts over here. How much time it must be taking for ECG to complete one standard ECG? How much time it must be requiring? Exactly 0.8 seconds की story है. फिर next 0.8 seconds then after. Now in this, if you see the each wave, P wave and QRS wave complex and T wave, what do they mean? Let's analyze the different waves of ECG. The P wave indicates atrial depolarization. जब कोई भी चेंबर डीपोलराइज होता है तो वो सिस्टोल में जाता है. So it represents what? Atrial depolarization या atrial systole. The QRS wave indicates ventricular depolarization, means ventricular systole. And during the T wave, the ventricular repolarization is nothing but the ventricular diastole. Now my question to all of you is, how long the P wave should last? P wave का time duration कितना होना चाहिए? Exactly point. What is the length of QRS wave? And how about T wave? Absolutely wrong. 0.4 sec. Do you realize why? Do you realize why T wave ventricular diastole? Hello, have a look. Why the T wave should be having 0.4 second? It is that period which is about that joint diastole, क्योंकि next 0.1 sec atrial में भी ventricular तो diastole में रहेंगे, so उनका 0.5 जो आप लिख रहे हो ना वो combined ventricular diastole नहीं है ये. It is that part of ventricular diastole which is for that 0.4 sec ना joint diastolic stage में है वो. You remember that? It is their joint diastole. So it should be 0.4 sec. Total बन जाएगा 0.8 sec. फिर से मैं explain करता हूँ, उसको understand करो. When you say the chamber is undergoing depolarization, means it is undergoing contraction, systole. When you say the chamber is repolarizing, it is undergoing relaxation, diastole. फिर से मैं आपको explain करता हूँ. P wave, what does that indicate? What does P wave indicate? Atrial systole, another name. Atrial का दूसरा क्या हो रहा है? Depolarization. How long will it last? Exactly 0.1 sec. How about QRS wave? How long does this last? 0.3 sec. And how about this T wave? It indicates what? Ventricular repolarization. Joint diastole. How long is this gonna last? For atrial depolarization, signal must be sent by which one? SAN. For ventricular depolarization, signal must be sent by which one? AVN. Okay. अब देखो आप. This side is millivolt. See, the millivolts for P wave are lesser, whereas the millivolts for QRS wave complex, Q down जाता है, फिर R up जाता है और S वापस डाउन जा रहा है. So वो QRS wave complex जो है, उसकी स्ट्रेंथ को कंपेयर करें तो P wave या QRS wave complex किसमें ज्यादा millivolts लगते हैं? QRS में. तो ऐसे नोड या एवी नोड किसका सिग्नल का इलेक्ट्रिक वोल्ट ज्यादा होता है? AV node, almost 3-4 times more. इसका मीनिंग क्या कंसिडर करने का? क्यों एट्रिया के कंपेयर में वेंट्रिकुलर्स में ज्यादा स्ट्रेंथ का करंट पास करना पड़ता है? What's the reason why the magnitude of the current required for atrial systole is lesser and that for the ventricular systole is stronger or greater? Why so? हाँ जेनिल, किसका वॉल थिक है? किसका वॉल थिक है? Ventricles का. So they require greater strength of the electric current for their contraction. अच्छा, किसी पर्सन का ईसीजी स्टैंडर्ड ईसीजी के साथ मैच करना है. देखिए स्टैंडर्ड ईसीजी में क्या मैच करेगा? दो चीजें मैच करेगी. इस एक्सिस पे क्या है? वाई एक्सिस पे क्या है? मिलीवोल्ट. स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ द इलेक्ट्रिक करंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ मिलीवोल्ट. और इस एक्सिस पे क्या है? वाई एक्सिस पे हाँ मिली सेकेंड, द टाइम एट विच गिवन इवेंट अकर्स. ओके, अब ये ग्राफ अगर ऐसा हो जाए तो आप देख रहे हो if the graph goes like this, what is the problem? Which part is having a problem compared with the standard? Exactly, Galav and Rudra are correct. Previous person was wrong. देखिए पी वेव में गड़बड़ है कहीं पे, देखा आपने? उसका जो मिलीवॉट्स का वैल्यू था वो डिफरेंट है यहाँ पे कंपेयर्ड विद द स्टैंडर्ड. या फिर ऐसा है कोई ग्राफ? कहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम दिख रहा है पता है आपको? दिख रहा है क्यू वेव फर्दर मोर डाउन देन द नॉर्मल. या फिर अगर ग्राफ ऐसे जाता है, टेल मी. आपको पता चला टाइम रिक्वायर्ड इज डिफरेंट. एस में गड़बड़ हो गया. So you can just compare the person's ECG with the normal standard ECG and can make out that which wave is affected. Each affected wave indicates a particular type of problem. जैसे P wave किसी का enlarge हो रहा है तो इसका मीनिंग कि उस पर्सन के एट्रिया में कुछ प्रॉब्लम है, उसके एट्रिया लार्जर हो रहे हैं, इसीलिए उसको ज्यादा मैग्नीट्यूड का करंट चाहिए. या किसी का वो QRS वेव लार्जर हो रहा है तो किसी के वेंट्रिकल्स में प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है. तो just by understanding this features of each wave and comparing it with the standardized standard ECG, one can get the idea about the problems related with the functioning of heart. Do you understand this much? Okay, so that was about the ECG. अगर आप बोलो तो मैं फिर से रिवाइज करा दूं, वरना आपको अगर पता है तो ग्रेट. That's good. Have you understood? See, any deviation of the ECG when it is compared with the patient's ECG, when compared with the standard one, and if you find any sort of deviation, you can say that heart's health is not good. Some ailment, some disorder, some problem is there with the heart. By looking at a particular wave, defective wave, you can say that particular part of the heart has a problem. जैसे मैंने एक एग्जांपल दिया कि P wave enlargement indicates that P wave enlargement indicates that there is a atrial enlargement. Heart में एट्रिया में enlargement हो रहा है ऐसा. ओके okay? चलिए ये किसी का टिपिकल हार्ट, ये टिपिकल ईसीजी है किसी का. अब किसी का ईसीजी इतने में ही कंप्लीट हो गया. जो ये यहां से यहां तक में कंप्लीट हुआ, ये इतने में ही कंप्लीट हो गया. तो ईसीजी एकदम परफेक्ट है. मैग्नीट्यूड ऑफ the millivolts per wave, P wave, Q wave, R, S wave, T wave. But the length of the ECG is reduced. इसका मीनिंग हार्टबीट इंक्रीज हो रही है या डिक्रीज हो रही है? पर मिनट हार्टबीट का रेट चेंज हो गया है, वो कितना है? हाँ, फास्ट हो रहा है. वो जो 0.8 सेकंड में खत्म होता था, वो अब शायद लेट्स से के 0.4 में खत्म हो रहा है. मींस हार्टबीट इंक्रीज हो रही है, डबल द रेट हो रहा है. तो नंबर ऑफ क्यूआरएस वेव्स अगर आप काउंट करो ना, उससे भी पता चल जाता है. दूर से देखोगे ना तो ईसीजी में ऐसा ही दिखेगा. तो ये ईच क्यूआरएस वेव इंडिकेट्स द हार्ट बीट. तो नंबर ऑफ क्यूआरएस वेव्स भी काउंट करोगे तो उससे पता चल जाएगा कि कितने हार्ट बीट्स है पर मिनट के. अगर क्यूआरएस वेव्स काउंट करोगे, ओवरऑल अगर आपको 72 ये कार्डियक साइकिल्स दिखते हैं, दैट मींस हार्ट बीट इज नॉर्मल. So ECG is a very good indicator about your heart health aspects. Your heart's health aspects can be clearly understood with the help of this ECG. So that was the detail on ECG. We have completed the study about ECG. We go to the next topic. The sounds during cardiac cycle. In your heartbeat, the sounds which are there, जैसे हिंदी मूवीज और अवर रूटीन लैंग्वेज में अगर बात करें, सो धक 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 हार्ट बीट्स, that's how it goes on. But in a scientific language, in a medicinal language, biological language, if we talk about, then these heartbeat sounds, the cardiac cycle sounds, they are lubbed up. They are which one? Lub, dub. Lub and dub. ऐसे दो साउंड्स आते हैं. अच्छा, lub sound is because of closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves. Obviously, AV valves closure, in short, that is the sound lub. अगर मैं कार्डियक साइकिल के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बात करूं, एंड इफ आई से दैट 0.4 सेकंड पे जॉइंट डायस्टोल खत्म होता है, फिर उसके बाद 0.1 सेकंड खत्म होने पे एट्रियल सिस्टोल खत्म होगा, और उसके बाद नेक्स्ट 0.3 सेकंड के बाद वेंट्रिकुलर सिस्टोल खत्म हो रहा है. तो ये जो जर्नी है 0.8 सेकंड्स की, अगर स्टार्ट होती है, लेट्स से it starts with joint diastole and it ends with ventricular systole, तो कौन से टाइम पे ये लब साउंड आएगा? 0.0 सेकंड से स्टार्ट करे और 0.8 सेकंड पे खत्म करे जर्नी को। 0.0 सेकंड से लेके 0.8 सेकंड तक की ये जो जर्नी है, तो इन दैट एग्जैक्टली 0.5 सेकंड पे आएगा आपका एक साउंड जो होगा लब। वो थोड़ा लेस लाउडर होगा बट लॉन्गर टाइम के लिए लगेगा, वो थोड़े वाल्स बड़े हैं, लब ऐसा जाएगा साउंड। ओके, and with the closure of semilunar valves, a shorter sound dub, but which is more strength, that will be coming at which time? वो कब आएगा? Exactly. लब डब, लब डब ऐसा आएगा। लब being longer, लब डब shorter, टाइम ड्यूरेशन के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, कब तक चलता है उसके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, बट लब इज लॉन्गर, डब इज शॉर्टर, बट लब इज लेस लाउडर, डब इज more. Lub is because of the closure of AV valves, dub is because of the closure of semilunar valves. जिसे हम धक 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 कहते हैं, वो एक्चुअली में लब डब साउंड है। और इस ट्यूनिंग में, इस रिदम में आते हैं। अगर तो हार्ट बीट्स 72 टाइम्स पर मिनट चलता है, एंड दैट टू फॉर ईच वन गोइंग फॉर 0.8 सेकेंड। सो विद दिस रिदम हार्ट बीट स्टार्ट होती है जॉइंट डायस्टोल से, अगर कंसिडर किया जाए 0.0 सेकंड पे, तो 0.5 सेकंड पे लब और 0.8 सेकंड पे डब, ऐसे दो साउंड आएंगे। फिर से नया साइकिल, फिर से नेक्स्ट नए साइकिल के 0.5 सेकंड पे लब और नेक्स्ट पे 0.8, उसके खत्म होने पे डब, ऐसे रिदम में ये साउंड्स आते रहेंगे, जिसको हम धक धक कहते हैं, वो एक्चुअली में लब डब होते हैं। डू यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस? The last topic for the day regarding this particular chapter, related to this particular chapter, and that is regulation of cardiac activity. By the way, have I sent the notes of this chapter? Students, I'm asking you, are you all there? Hello, am I audible? So have I sent the notes of this chapter? All pages 1 to 23. ये नोट्स है ना, वन, ये जैसे 21 नंबर है, ऐसे 22 23 तक है शायद, सो 23 पेजेस तक का मैंने सेंड किया है आपको नोट्स, और नॉट? गिव मी द कंफर्मेशन. Okay, one student saying yes, one more need to confirm it. Yes, okay, fine. Rudra, you are saying no, Disha saying no. Now why two different answers from students? Rudra, unmute yourself.
Sir, you have not sent up to number 23.
So I have sent it up to what?
Sir, up to human circulatory system I have got.
अच्छा, और जिसने यस लिखा है ऐसे लोग?
સર 24 સુધી મળી ગઈ છેલ્લું ટોપિક.
Now, what is this going on? I cannot understand. Either Galav is correct or Rudra. One of them is lying.
સર હું હમણાં જ ચેક કર્યું, મારી પાસે ખુલ્લી જ પડી છે પાછળ.
I believe Galav may be correct because I also think I have sent 23, 24 pages.
સર તમે 24 સુધી મોકલેલી છે.
બોલો રુદ્ર.
સર मैं ચેક કરી લઉં.
હા, અને એક્સ્ટ્રા બી પિક્સ મોકલ્યા ને other than the notes. Do you remember Galav?
હા સર તમે લખેલું જ છે ચેટમાં.
એક્સ્ટ્રા પિક્સ બી લખીને મેં સેન્ડ કર્યું છે.
Sir, you have sent on 11 January.
Oh, with the date it is available now. And videos up to the last video you must have received, hopefully. Okay. So yet, if any time we are not able to pass on this material by mistake, if it is left, so please inform as early as possible. Will be in a right position, will be in a right position to let you know the details. Soon she will be passing on this information. Look, how much is the time typically? 72 times. But does the heart beat for 72 times throughout our life, or there are changes in the heartbeat numbers per minute? Yes, it changes. For example, when you are running or doing exercise, or when you are excited, when you see something shocking, what happens to the heartbeat? They remain same, they decrease, or they increase the number? Increases, isn't it? When you are sleeping, virtually no activity of your body, at that time your heartbeats will decrease a little bit in number. So in your body, within the 24-hour span, you can see your heartbeats keep changing, not drastically, but yes, certainly at times they change. And when you are sleeping, your heartbeats decrease from the normal 72. When you are quiet and normal routine activity, it might be around 72. And you know, when you are doing exercise, depending upon the strength of exercise, it might increase from 72 to 90, 100 at times. Strenuous exercise, when you do, it might reach to 120 plus also. Our heart is a myogenic heart. It has a nodal tissue, Asn and Avn, which are responsible for, you know, normal heartbeats, normal rhythm of heartbeats 72 times. Because they can release the impulse only at 0.8 seconds cycle every time by the distance of 0.1 sec by the Asn and Avn. They maintain the rhythm of heartbeat. Auto excitability is because of the nodal tissue. But what if the heart has to beat faster? They cannot manage it. They can manage the normal rhythm, 72 beats per minute. That is something which they can manage. What they cannot manage, the nodal tissues cannot manage to increase the heartbeat rate. At that time, the brain will intervene, the brain will interfere. The neural centers in medulla oblongata, there are specialized centers in your medulla oblongata part of the brain. which can control the heartbeats in this scenario. जैसे autonomous nervous system का ये जो part है, neural centers in a medulla oblongata. These autonomous nervous system has two components, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So from this medulla oblongata neural centers, a set of nerves which are related with the sympathetic system, they innervate the heart. They reach up to the heart. They are already having always a permanent connection in the heart. And parallelly from the same neural centers present in medulla oblongata, the nerve fibers, the nerves which are connected to the heart. So heart always has two connections, one from sympathetic section and one from parasympathetic section. Whenever your heartbeats have to increase from normal 72 to any higher level, stimulus will come via sympathetic nerves. They will stimulate your heart to beat faster. And when your exercise or your excited state is coming to the normal, then your heartbeats have to be brought to the normal from higher to the normal. And that time your heartbeat rate has to be decreased from higher to 100 or 120, whatever it is, to the 72 by the stimulation from parasympathetic nerve. I mean, your heart is receiving nerves from sympathetic section and parasympathetic section both. When your sympathetic section stimulates your heartbeats go higher. When your parasympathetic section stimulates your heartbeats are brought to normal. Higher से decrease होके normal पे लाया जाता है. Bottom line, it has to be brought to 70, 72, all around that per minute. There is another arrangement for increment of the heartbeat, and that is hormones from our adrenal gland. हमारा जो adrenal medulla gland होता है, adrenal gland का medulla region, core region, वहां से दो hormones release होते हैं, adrenaline and noradrenaline. As soon as this gland releases these two hormones in our body, they reach to the heart and increase the heartbeat. Of course, they can increase the heartbeat like the sympathetic section. But to decrease, always the parasympathetic section is responsible. So your adrenal medulla hormones such as adrenaline and noradrenaline, and on the other hand, the sympathetic nerve section from your autonomous nervous system, whose centers are present in medulla oblongata. These two can always increase the heartbeat, whereas this one can decrease the heartbeat. So if a normal rhythm of heartbeat is to be maintained, the job is given to the nodal tissue. But from the normal heartbeat, if deviation is required, deviation means whether you want to increase the heartbeat or from increased level you want to decrease it to the normal, it is always done by the nervous system and endocrine system. बोलिए, concept clarity मिला आपको? So, what is responsible for normal rhythm of heartbeat 72 times beat per minute? Nahi, Zanil, wrong. Galo, correct. Ascend and Avn. Your nodal tissue is responsible for your normal rhythm of the heartbeat. It's auto-excitability that automatically, without any external stimulus, it maintains its heartbeat. That is because of nodal tissue. इस feature को हम auto excitability कहते हैं, auto regulation कहते हैं. and nodal tissue is responsible for that. This is the reason why our heart is a myogenic heart. देखिए कॉकरोच का हार्ट न्यूरोजेनिक होता है, वहां पे नर्वस टिश्यू डिसाइड करता है कि हार्ट बीट्स कब होगे, कैसे होगे, कितने होगे. अनलाइक दैट वर्टिब्रेट हार्ट इज अ मायोजेनिक हार्ट, जिसमें हार्ट खुद अपने आप डिसाइड करता है उसकी हार्ट बीट्स. However, sometimes the heartbeats need to be altered, and that time, which system will intervene to change the heartbeats? Two systems are there. Which two systems will intervene and alter the heartbeats from the normal standard pattern? Yeah, autonomous nervous system and the endocrine system's hormones. Exactly. In which part of the brain the centers are located to regulate the cardiac activity? Neural centers to regulate the cardiac activity are found in which part of the brain? Medulla oblongata. What is the full form of ANS? Autonomic nervous system. It's which section and its connection causes increment in the heartbeat if as and when stimulated, it can cause increment in the heartbeat. Which section of it is responsible for the increment of the heartbeat? Sympathetic nerves, their connection into the heart. When it stimulates the heart will increase the beats. Which component of ANS has a connection in heart and its stimulation can decrease the heartbeat to bring it to the normal one, 72? Parasympathetic nerves. Their connection in the heartbeat, as and when it stimulates the heart, it will bring the heartbeats down. Which gland is also influencing the heartbeats? Exactly, adrenal gland.